Yeah, we all get excited for this stuff. Last night, so I finished up Narcos Mexico Season 2. I moved into a Unabomber special. I watched 2 NBA games. And then I didn't work out yesterday, so I got home at 1:30, and I just all day, I was on mock drafts.
I was about to say, how much time, what is a night for you? How much time do you have?
I went to bed at 10:45, so from 1:30 to 10:45, 9 hours.
So that's your day.
Yeah, my whole day. And so I came back, and then I jumped into some NBA games at night. But as I'm watching this, I'm watching mock drafts all day. And fans always get offended. But, folks, a third of the first round will underachieve. This is not an exact science. It's very hard. It's why I don't beat up on teams. I mean, Pete Carroll's had first-round picks. You know, John Snyder and Pete Carroll are smart guys. They've made mistakes in the first couple rounds I just don't like. I didn't like the Rashad Penny pick a couple years ago. And so it's inexact, but I do think the smart people are better at it. And since the Eagles 21 years ago hired Howie Roseman, just think about this. 14 playoff berths, 10 division titles, 6 NFC championship appearances in a Super Bowl. You may want to listen to him. And he is joining us via the Coward Global Satellite Network in Indianapolis. This stuff is all fun for me. I'm a mock draft dork. I am proud of it. But some of it has to matter, Howie, or you would not be there. Give me an example where you've gone to a combine, and it has offered clarity on a player where you had a question or two, and it offered some clarity on an Eagle.
Well, first of all, we miss you here in Indy. You know, it's not the same without you. We'd love to have you, man. We got good restaurants here. It's fun. But we'll do it this way until we get you here live. And I think when you talk about this process for us, you know, you look at it like kind of like a seesaw. So when you watch the tape, that's part of the evaluation. And then you want the testing to match. And when it does, you feel really good about a player. You feel really good about a pick, you know, because you have the objective and the subjective information kind of matching. Now, when one side is kind of uneven a little bit, like you got Batman on a seesaw right here, it's a little bit of a problem. So you got to figure out what kind of resources you want to put into that. And that's for us, this is part of it. When you talk about the information, the medical is really important. The interviews are really important. And then the testing by position, it helps us get a sense of what that guy has in his body.
They say there's going to be 50 wide receivers potentially drafted, Howie. We have kind of a sea change happening in football in America where the best athletes are now playing wide receiver, it feels like, and quarterback. I can remember a time in my life where the NFL draft felt like there were 20 running backs. Now, the state of California in high school football may have 2 really elite running backs and 40 wide receivers. When you guys need, obviously, I believe, even with Deshaun, you could use a speed receiver. There's a lot of mock drafts having you taking speed receivers. But when you come into a draft, Howie, and there are 45 potential drafted wide receivers, would it potentially make you think, you know what, we can get it later, we can get it later, we can get it later? How does it change your psychology when one position's loaded?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because you look at like a draft like last year where the defensive line class was really loaded.
Yeah.
And it allowed us to get a left tackle, a guy that we think can be a really good left tackle, and trade up a little bit and get him at 21, where most years that left tackle, he's going 10, 12, 15, somewhere where when you're in the 20s, you got no shot. But at the same token, then you've had drafts where it's really strong in a particular position, and guys are saying, I want to get the guy I really like. And so you're left with kind of the leftovers. And so we need what's best for the Philadelphians, which matches the skill set that we're looking for out of every position, not only the receiver position. But I think it's most importantly, like we have a quarterback who's in his prime, and we got to make sure that we surround him with protection up front, that we have the offensive line that's able to protect him and keep him healthy, and that we surround him with playmakers as well. And you saw it a little bit the last 2 years in the draft. You know, last year in the second round, we drafted Miles Sanders and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, but we expect to take a big jump from year 1 to year 2. The year before, coming off the Super Bowl, we had Dallas Goedert, a guy that, you know, we think is going to be an incredible player for us going forward and really complements Zach Ertz, who obviously a great player in his own right. So I think we just want to make sure that when we look back at the years that we had Carson Wentz, we maximize his ability to be successful.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you guys moved up to get Carson. It paid off. You also paid him a contract after a couple of injuries, which some people push back on. But I've always said this about Carson. He's the only guy in the league that does things that Patrick Mahomes does. I trust my eyes. I think he's an all-time special, unique talent. And to your point, now it's time to give him that support. I want to talk about every team has a different philosophy. I can remember the late Al Davis. He loved speed. He loved guys that could go over the top. If I was to look at your draft patterns, what matters to Philadelphia? What is it? You know, Rich McKay once told me he loved players who had been big in big games. Some guys shrink, some guys rise. It mattered to him to get the SEC left tackle that was great in a big game. What is your DNA in this thing, this whole game of talent acquisition?
Well, I think the first thing about it is that we're building a team. We're not collecting talent. We have a limited amount of resources, whether it's draft picks, whether it's salary cap space. And so we got to keep the main thing the main thing. We got to figure out what our priorities are and make sure that those are taken care of. And once those are taken care of, you can build out. You can figure out everything else that you need, but you have no chance if your priorities aren't taken care of. You know, in Philly, it's no secret for a long time. We're going to build along the lines. We're going to try to have a great quarterback. And then we're going to try to make sure that we have weapons for the quarterback, that we're preventing the big plays. And we're going to build a team like that. And you can't have everything in this league. You just can't. There's not enough salary cap space. There's not enough draft picks to be able to do that. So we're going to focus on the things that we can do to help our football team win as many games as possible. And hopefully a big part of our offseason already off the field has been, can we start a little faster than we have the last 2 years? Yeah. And maybe not put ourselves in the hole where towards the end of the season, every game is do or die.
Have you ever overthought the combine? Paralysis by analysis. And I know this is a question that, I'm asking you to say, have you ever missed? But is there a danger in it, Howie? You watch so much darn tape. You fall in love with a guy. You overthink it, maybe talk yourself out of a guy. Has that ever happened to you?
There's no doubt about it. You definitely have those situations, and then it kind of flips itself on the head. Like, last year we had this kind of theory, and we looked at it just from the personnel side, the analytics side, and there had never really been successful receivers drafted high who never had tremendous production in college. And then two guys came out last year who were drafted relatively early, who had tremendous production in the NFL. So I think we have to be open-minded and see where the league is going as well.
Could you, Howie Roseman is joining us, executive VP, general manager of the Eagles. He's been there 21 years, 14 playoffs, 10 division titles, 6 NFC championship appearances, and a Super Bowl. So, okay, this morning I'm the bad guy because I do think hand size means something. I don't think it's everything, but I think this is a story. And here I look at Joe Burrow, and I'm like, listen, he had the best offensive line. He had a great running back. He had great receivers. LSU's a football factory. He could go to a team with lesser of everything. Can you give me some clarity? I'm not saying hand size is everything, but I always thought, it's something. Isn't it something?
It's something. As you talk about a quarterback and his ability to protect the ball, to throw in bad weather conditions, it's something. Now, the question, where's the breakoff? And what really matters? And also, when you talk about size, when you have a smaller quarterback, hand size traditionally has mattered more for shorter quarterbacks. The bigger the hands, those shorter quarterbacks, those guys are tremendously successful without, wanting to tamper. There are some shorter quarterbacks in the National Football League who have huge hands, and they're able to control the ball in bad weather conditions. Now, that's not an absolute deal breaker. I mean, obviously, you're talking about a player who's a tremendous player, an outstanding player. We're not picking anywhere close to where it's going to be a discussion. But I think it all is thrown into the pot as you're trying to come up and figure out the best recipe for success.
By the way, you're a very aggressive...
I just kind of made up that line. I'm going to use that. I kind of like that. Throw in the pot recipe for success. I kind of like that.
I may steal it. Joy and I always talk about this. You're aggressive. You're a guy that'll go, and I think aggressive wins in sports. That you got to believe something. You got to be early on analytics. You got to be aggressive. Jerry West used to say after he made that Shaq deal with Orlando, he almost threw up. That it's really hard to make big deals. You're a guy that makes big deals. Do you ever have a night you don't sleep? Because you're a guy that'll trade up. The Carson Wentz moment.
all the time, all the time. But I feel like our job, our responsibility is to get out of that bell curve. You know, most guys are going to be in that middle of that bell curve. And to be great, you have to be in that bottom of that bell curve. And the only way to do that is to get outside the box, is to think differently and be aggressive. We're very fortunate in Philadelphia that we have an owner who encourages aggressiveness, who doesn't come back and say, you made this mistake because you were too aggressive. You know, I think about the Sam Bradford trade and where we were, and we really wanted Carson to sit for a year.
Yep.
And that trade was made a week before the start of the regular season. And I knew it was the right thing for our football team, for our organization going forward, to recoup some of the picks that we traded for Carson.
Yep.
But I also knew there was risk in playing Carson, who had missed some of the preseason due to injury, who was really coming in and scheduled to be the third quarterback, and that it was going to put a lot of people at risk. And I remember, you know, not sleeping at all that night and just kind of staring at my ceiling and thinking about it, and getting on the phone with Rick Spielman at 5:45 the next morning, and you know, talking to him. And I said, "You able to sleep?" And he said, "Not even a little bit. How about you?" And I said, "Not even a little bit." You know, and that's the nature of the job. And these are hard decisions, but that's our responsibility. Our responsibility is to make tough decisions and to make sure that we do a lot more right than wrong.
Howie, great talking to you. Howie Roseman of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Thanks for having me. Love it. Love being on with you. Love listening to you.
All right, there's Howie Roseman. Yeah, this stuff is hard. I mean, when Jerry West has talked about it, he's like, let me tell you something. You get sick. You're physically ill when you're making these massive moves. Kobe, remember, initially was drafted by Charlotte, and Shaq ended up in Orlando, and you have to make these career-altering moves. And Howie Roseman is hyper-aggressive, and Joy and I, we like aggressive. Untuck It makes shirts specifically designed to be worn untucked. Go to untuckit.com. The code is HEARD, 20% off your first order. Here's Joy Taylor with the news.
No.